the whole online dating thing. That did not exist, obviously, because we did not have internet. We didn't have cell phones. We were just like...
None of that. Nothing.
We were still churning milk, Abby, or butter, whatever it is, with a butter churn and wearing our prairie bonnets. Yeah. Welcome to Aging in Style with Lori Williams, the podcast all about finding the silver lining no matter what life throws your way. I'm Lori Williams, an award-winning senior living expert, author, educator, and caregiver to my husband, Mark. Join me as I share insights, tips, and personal stories to help you navigate the world of senior housing, discover ways to pay for care, advocate for your loved ones, and most importantly, learn how to thrive, not just survive, as you age. Hi, welcome to Aging in Style. We're doing things a little different today. I have two guests with me, and we are going to be jumping into a talk about the show Later Daters, which is on Netflix. So before we get into what the show's about, let me introduce you to our guests. We have Teresa Williams.
Hey there, glad to be here.
And we have Abby Williams.
Hi, everyone.
Abby is my daughter. Teresa is my friend, even though we all share the same last name. Teresa, I consider my adopted sister. Anyhow, we are talking about the show called Later Daters, and maybe you caught it. It's currently on Netflix. And I'm not a big reality show person, but I thought because I work in senior living, I would go ahead and watch it and just see what I thought about it. The premise is there are people who are in their 50s through 70s who are dating, and they may be different stages of life, like some are divorced, never married, or widowed. And so there's 6 people, and the show takes you through them going on dates. But the twist on it is there is a Harvard-educated behavior scientist who is a part of the project, and she talks to them about dating and how it was to date when they were younger, like in the 80s dating. And I can speak for myself and say the last time I went on a date was 1988. So things have certainly changed since that time. So the show, I believe it was 8 episodes, follows them through dating and what it's like to date at this age. So that's the premise. And interestingly, it's produced by Michelle Obama. I didn't even know she was a producer, but I noticed that in the credits. So anyhow, we're just going to kick it off and talk a little bit about our situations so that you understand where we're coming from and then our take on the show. So Teresa.
Hey, I am 57. I am divorced, and I find myself single. I have to be very careful about my perspective and dating on this subject because we have sweet, fragile, precious eyes over here and ears that are listening.
That's Abby she's talking about, who is 21.
Yes, and I don't want to put anything negative on how wonderful and joyous it can be to have a partner in your life and have something wonderful. However, my perspective from my age is so much different than it is if you were just starting or growing with someone in a relationship, because I'm already established and I am older and financially more secure and very independent. So what I potentially would be looking for is much different than what our young Abby would be looking for in a partner. I would be looking for more of someone who is reliable, trustworthy, someone that's more of a companion, and we would grow old together.
And I do think that's something the show definitely hit on, is that based on age, you're looking for something completely different at age, say, 60 than you were looking for at 21. There's one lady on the show who is 63, and she is a widow. And I don't remember if she said, but I'm assuming she married probably like 22, 23 and had been married to her husband all this time. And she said she was very accomplished. She was a ophthalmologist, is that right? Yeah. And she was 63. And she said, which stuck with me, that she did not want to be a purse or a nurse for someone. And I think when you're older, that is definitely something to think about because, yeah, a purse, you've worked hard for your money and anything you have by the age of 63 or in your 50s, and you don't want someone to be dating you because they want your money, which unfortunately we hear too many. Yeah, we hear a lot of stories like that. I mean, the bad people who prey on lonely older women or men. And then the other side of that is you don't want to be a nurse and taking care of someone. And we see that a lot. Teresa and I working in senior living where there's many older women that we both met that were married to one husband, took care of him, then remarried, took care of another, and maybe even a third husband. And that's great if that's your calling. I currently am a caregiver and I don't want to be a caregiver for another person. Okay, now let's introduce Abby. Abby has the young person perspective because she's 21. Go ahead, Abby.
I'm currently in about 1.5 years relationship with my current boyfriend, and I think it's very different from such an established, more mature person looking for a relationship because I started with the foundation of friendship and thinking how important that was to me in establishing where I'm going and making sure that my future is set up for fun, exciting things, but also having that stability of knowing that you can enjoy life, but you also have that safe place to come home to and that safe person to rely on in those troubling times or in the more difficult times of your life.
But at your age, you're also thinking, because you're young, you're thinking all those things that Teresa and I, being older, have already lived through. You're thinking about career, buying a house, having kids, just the whole life.
Yeah, like building it more so than settling in it. And I think that for me, it was really important that I find someone who is equally as interested in their career as I am in mine, and also encouraging me to pursue my career first and finishing my education first and just completing my personal goals to make sure I'm established independently before anything in our relationship overall, making sure that I'm okay as an individual and that my goals are met.
So I think us talking, we actually did this podcast earlier, recorded it, and I think I did not plug in the microphone, so we lost it. So we've had this conversation and we're recreating it for y'all because sometimes we make mistakes in life. But I think, Abby, as a younger person, you come into marriage with a different perspective and different goals. Once you have achieved all those life goals, finishing school, getting married, buying your first house, starting a savings, all those things, and having kids, you've gone through all of these life milestones. You've also been through some bad things because, I mean, life is not all roses and unicorns and stuff. There's going to be bad things that happen. So there's things that I think as we get older, there's some things that we're not willing to settle for. We're not willing to compromise. I think you're more likely to compromise when you're younger and you're not jaded. Not to say we're jaded. As you get a little older, you just are more guarded, I think.
I said in the last one we did, I'm less tolerant. And if you have children and you're trying to join a family together, there's so many challenges involved in that. And it really takes acceptance and compromise. And above, in my opinion, I've realized that even above love, the acceptance and respect part has to be a main component I when it comes to compromise at our age, it is not easy.
No. And my story is a little different. I am married. My husband, though, had 4 strokes 2 years ago. And while I am married, I'm honoring my commitment, my vows I took very seriously to care for my husband in sickness and in health. It's a very different marriage because I'm his caregiver, and it really changes your dynamic up a lot to switch from spouse to caregiver. And people have asked me, and probably they asked me because I am a totally open book and I will tell you my truth. And so if people have asked me, would you ever marry again? And my answer is no, I wouldn't, because the whole purse or nurse thing, for one, I, have worked hard for everything I have, and I don't want to be a caregiver to someone else. So that's a no for me. And even when it comes, it's hard for me to say at this point, would I date? But I would say, because I don't want that to sound disrespectful towards my husband, to even like, I would say no, as of this point, that's not of interest to me. Another issue that happens, and when you step into another marriage or into a second marriage and you already have kids, there's challenges that come with that. So Teresa is a great person to talk about this because she did have a second marriage in her 50s. So do you want to share a little bit about that and the unique challenges that brought to your family?
Sure. Yes, and so he had 3 kids and I had 2, and they were still at the school. They were high school going into college. And beside the differences of the parenting challenges, he was a single father for a while, and he had boys and 1 girl, and they were pretty much used to doing what they wanted to do. And I had my routine with my boys. There was a lot of differences in that, and we had a very difficult time compromising. One main factor was who's paying and how are we paying for college, because he had not planned this. And I kept trying to ask, are we giving each child a certain amount? And there was never any forthcoming of, let's be fair and figure this out and have something that I have in solid that I know, hey, this is what it looks like. So many other things, and I'm always up for a challenge, but this was more than was rational, in my opinion. So without being negative about everything, just living together with someone at my age or our age in your late 50s, 60s, you have a set routine in a set way, and all of a sudden you're letting someone in. I haven't grown with this person yet that I'm living with. I'm creating new habits, and at our age that becomes a bit more difficult.
No, that makes sense, because like you said, when you're young, like Abby's age, you are growing together and growing up together, and it's all exciting and new and everything. And so one of the other things they did say on the Later Daters, that was an issue with some of them about dating, that Suzanne in particular, a couple of the guys, they had children that were like 14, 15, and they didn't want to deal with that, didn't want to have to go through children. And there was another guy, I don't remember his name. Do you remember the guy's name? I can't think of his name right now, but he said he went on a date with a woman and she had adult children who were living at home. And I don't know the situation, why they were home, but he was like, that's a deal breaker, because his belief was once they hit 18, your kids are out of the house, never to come back. That for me, he would be a deal breaker for me, because my belief is my kids, no matter what their age, they're always welcome in my house. And my kids watching that show made me realize I probably wouldn't, I am definitely not second marriage material or even maybe dating material, because my kids are 100% number one. They come first before anything. So that would be like, yes, see you later. Don't even try to tell me what to do with my kids. I think that is definitely a challenge of dating older. Abby, anything you want to add?
I think that's a really interesting point, especially going over the differences in compromise between young and older relationships, because when you're young, the biggest compromise you have may be how you fold your laundry, or who does the dishes this night, or who picks up after what, or all these different factors that are a little less stressful and a little less important than, oh, how am I going to raise your children? Or how do you want me to be in your children's life? Like, or any of that.
Life savings, exactly. That's paid off,
or who's moving into whose home because which house is paid off more. Any of those interesting things, problems, challenges,
Challenges for sure.
And I feel like that's something that people don't really realize. There's such a big difference in those comparisons and in those compromises.
Mm-hmm. I think it was really interesting to watch the show because it definitely put a spotlight on how different it is to date in your 50s, 60s, and 70s. The other thing that they had this, behavioral scientist.
Yeah.
That was, so they had her on to talk with them about dating. One of the things she said, which was funny, it made Abby and I both laugh because Abby's, that's so you. One of the ladies, beautiful, a niece, she had gone on a date and her daughter, because they would like debrief with their family members and maybe it was a daughter, or maybe it was son, whatever. So she came back from her date and she said it went well. And her daughter said, why don't you text him? And she's, oh no, he has to text me. The man's got to make the move. And so the behavioral scientist on the show, she said, no, you're dating and you're like from the 1980s, that things have changed. People don't date like this anymore. And Abby's laughing because that's the kind of advice you always gave me. And I'm like, I stand by my solid advice in dating, but they wanted them to change in how they dated and I guess would be more open to pursuing the man. And I don't know, for me, that was like, made me also go, I'm good. Because, when I dated, of course, it was 1988 was my last date with my husband. And I'm from Louisiana, so maybe there's a little Southern belle in there too, but it was more, I hate to say a game, but it's like a game. Let's be honest. It was like you hooked them and acted like you weren't as interested.
Like a courting system almost.
Like maybe courting a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, man will bring you flowers and open your car door and treat you right and prove himself to you, like a relationship. Yeah. Rather than a modern perspective where it's much more common for women to take charge nowadays and not waiting for someone to respond or
like call first, that sort of thing. Yeah. And I think that's just a generational thing.
For me, being in that situation, I do have that more traditional, old-fashioned mentality. And so I just won't even put myself out there because I'm not aggressive in that manner and I don't understand that mentality. I don't think it's wrong. It's just a different generational thought process. Mm-hmm.
The thing that kind of struck me, and of course I asked the TV and they couldn't respond to me, but my thought was, you're telling her to date, and she was like 61, you're telling her to date like she's not the way she dated in the 1980s, but the guys she's dating dated in the 1980s too. So wouldn't they respond to that kind of dating? They're going to respond to the new date. You know what I'm saying? But that's how they always dated too. But I don't know. That one kind of threw me off a little bit. And then of course, the whole online dating thing that did not exist, obviously, because we did not have internet. We didn't have cell phones. We were just like, we were still churning milk, Abby, or butter, whatever it is. We were churning with a butter churn and wearing our prairie bonnets. Yeah. No, we weren't. But let's talk about online dating because I know you entered the world of online dating briefly your first year in college, and it was mostly you and I just laughed over it because
for entertainment purposes only.
So I think your friends were all online dating. So she set up on, I don't even remember what it was. Bumble. I think that was Bumble. It. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we would call it, oh, that sounds awful, but we called it shopping. We look through, scroll through, or what is it? Like swiping. We'd swipe through. And I personally was just appalled because these young men were taking pictures. There was always like 3 places they took pictures. One in a public restroom with a nasty bathroom.
Mirror selfies.
Yeah. Or the mirror selfies, like they're working out kind of selfies in the gym or with a big
dead animal.
Yeah. A big dead animal.
Holding up a dead animal like it was some type of trophy.
Fish.
Yeah, big fish. And I just remember looking at Abby and being like, I am so sorry for your generation. But it's so different from ours. Now, I don't know. Have you ever been on a dating app?
No, I'm not brave enough to do that.
No, because on the show, they said this, that I think they'd all tried the dating apps, but either they got ghosted or it just didn't feel right. I don't think any of the women actually went on dates from the dating apps. I think the men did, though.
My thought of a dating app is typical society. You find someone you connect with, you meet them, and maybe you think that it's great. You might want to go on a second date, third date. But is there something else better? That opens up, I think, for is this the person, or is there something better? Or do I keep scrolling to see if that next person is the perfect person? At the end of the day, there is no perfect person out there. It's the connection you have and growing that connection. But that has gotten lost, and I do believe in that type of media. I think that's gotten lost.
And on the show, on Later Dater, I felt that too, that some of the people was like, she was attractive, but let's just see, let me go on another date. Yeah. And there was one guy, I think that's all he wanted to do was just, a serial dater. That's what he was. And even when the lady we talked about, Suzanne, she was precious. She was from Georgia. It was filmed in Georgia, but she was like your Southern Belle, Georgia accent, and everything. And the second date, she went out with this guy, Avery. And I don't want to give a whole lot away in case you haven't watched the show, but she went out with this guy and they had a great time. They're laughing, having a wonderful time. And then she went to debrief with her daughter and she said, I don't know, he's an Alabama fan. And she's a huge Georgia Bulldogs fan. And the behavioral scientist was like, okay, that's just making an excuse not to go out. But funny enough, I don't think it really was so much. I mean, she did end up going out with him again, but it may have been an excuse. But, I kind of got it personally, being an LSU Tiger fan. I wouldn't go out with someone who was an Alabama fan. Just kidding, Alabama people. No, I'm really not. I'm not kidding. Am I kidding?
No.
I'm really the way they're looking at me. But again, that is, I think, an older person's perspective. At 21, you probably don't really care. And maybe it is even an excuse, because I think when you're young, that's what's expected of you in society. And that's what you want, to find your person and grow together and build all this. But at our ages, we're just like, the silliest things. That's just a deal breaker right there.
For me, it's, he wears his socks funny. No, next. No, not really. There's been no next. I haven't even put myself out there, for goodness sakes.
A good point that I want to go back to the modern dating is that now with dating apps today, big thing to consider, and the reason why I actually didn't ever pursue this as a serious option is the safety levels.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not only getting yourself comfortable enough to go meet this person in a public space, but just thinking about all the dangers that there are now today, when there wasn't as many concerns or risks back in the 80s when you dated. Because
they can be catfishing you, right? Where it's 70-year-old man or something.
Technology is so advanced nowadays that it is really hard to find someone who is genuine. And most of the time they are, but you never truly know until you're in a public space with them. By then, it could be too late.
Yeah, it is.
I feel very lucky that the relationship I'm in developed first in high school. We became friends in high school, and then right after college, or right after my first few years of college, we reconnected back in our hometown. But that safety was a huge thing for me, and that was why I just never really pushed myself to go out and go meet these people, because you don't know who's out there. You don't know the risks.
We did have those discussions, don't go meet these guys, because again, like you said, we don't know who they are. And there are some horror stories of people meeting. Well, I would thinking now, I would never want to just meet someone online and go out with them. Even back in the 80s, I think we were still careful. I think the difference is back when Teresa and I were in our younger years, you met someone more organically. You met them at school. You met them at work. You met them at church or through a family member. In my case with Daddy, I met him. He was my mom's boss, which is weird, but it worked out. He's a little bit older than me, but you just knew a little something about him before you went out.
I think a good message that the show brings is that actually there was an experience with a niece, one of the ladies on the Later Daters, who actually went and met a man, and he just kept making comments to her about her appearance and how she had a little, ghetto inside.
Yeah, he was saying that to her. He was very, yes.
It was almost to a creepy point where she just felt uncomfortable, and she actually dismissed herself and saying, my Uber's here, I need to go, because she was put in that uncomfortable situation where she could have felt that there's a danger level there that was just outside of her comfort zone.
He was being very creepy. Like he would say things under his breath, like she wouldn't hear it, but she would hear it. It was very strange. And she was she was a very accomplished and successful, educated woman. There was no reason to be treating her that way. So that was really icky. I forgot about that. But I don't know. Anything else y'all want to add about it? Anything from the show that was a takeaway?
What I took away from the show is that regardless of the relationships that they left with, like romantically or platonically, something that grew no matter what in their dating experience was their relationship with their family and connecting with them a little deeper, whether it's learning something new about their family members or this is something that happened in my past or something that just connects them on a more personal level, on a deeper level. More as friends than family members, but it was just interesting to see how this process opened up their trust and their experiences and their willingness to go out and do events and put themselves out there.
Yeah, they definitely put themselves out there. I think the one who probably put herself out the most was Pam, who was, I think, like 70, 71, something like that. And her granddaughter, she had raised her and she was really pushing her to do something because she had isolated herself. She lived in a small town. She was in the house all the time with her animals and she just really wasn't out there. And so I think the cool thing for her was watching, like her first date was a train wreck. And then I think ultimately what she wanted, without giving a lot of the show away, was to not be so isolated, to have a companion, to have just a friend, like a platonic friend. And I think that's probably what a lot of older women want. We don't, maybe some people are looking for the whole, travel buddy, someone who's more of a friend. And I'm not saying some people still want a romantic connection, I'm sure, but I think there's a lot of older women that it's more just about having that companion and someone to go through life with.
Opening up the options for what if a relationship could look like, whether that is platonic, romantic, someone just to go get dinner with, or someone to go on a walk with.
Or go to a movie or something,
It's an activity buddy, someone who you can talk to on the phone when you're feeling down. But I think it really opened up the possibilities for a lot of these people to realize that they aren't alone, truly. Even though they are separated, they still have people who care about them.
Yeah, I think so too.
Working in the senior industry, I am in an assisted living community, and I see that even in your 70s and 80s, there's still a craving for someone to connect with opposite sex. They want to be able to have a companion. I see men that, and women that still want to have that companionship. And I've seen it go further than a companionship. Not literally, but
I literally have seen some things in senior living.
But I know it's going on. So I don't want to excuse the fact that those things are still happening. And
it's fine. Yeah, good for them if that's what they want.
Wonderful. And maybe someday I'll find myself in the same boat. But yeah, don't want to excuse that either, because Abby brought up a great point the last time we did this about those types of things too, that intimacy is still very important in a senior's life.
That's true. And that was when we had talked on the first time I tried to make this podcast and didn't have it plugged in right. We talked about when Abby and I were watching it, she was having a total ick factor because there were a couple of scenes where there was some kissing and of older people. And so it was, what were you saying?
It wasn't so much it was just more on the shocking side. And it made me realize that no matter what age you are, you still crave that connection and you still crave that passion and romance to some degree.
To Abby's point, you can still have intimacy no matter what your age is, 70, 80, whatever, 90. And when you're younger, you think about people that age still being intimate or craving that romance and a first date and all the getting the butterflies, because they were talking on Later Dater. They had butterflies in their stomachs and all that stuff. And I think it's probably shocking if you're in your 20s to think of that. Whereas at our age, at 60, I could see someone feeling that way, because honestly, it's just, in my opinion, this is how I feel. I feel still like 17 inside. I don't feel like I'm 60. I feel the outside of us are aging, but the inside we're awkward the same. And we still all have those same needs and desires. And so the look she's giving me.
Abby's like, ew. Well, and can you remember, Lori, when you were in your 20s looking at your parents at 50 and 16? They're so old. Like, I can remember that vividly. And here I am, 57. I'm like,
not so old.
Not that old, but and compared to my people in my community that are in their 80s and 90s, but I'm going to be there someday too.
Yeah, we all will. I think if you have not seen this show, I do think it's a good one to watch. I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting experiment, basically, just learning, seeing the viewpoint of that age and what dating looks. And it's a little bit terrifying for me personally. And I don't know about Abby. Any final thoughts on it, Abby?
I think it just helped me realize how important it is when you do take those marriage vows, when you do commit to someone, how those words do have a lot more meaning than you're initially thinking. And even though it doesn't always work out in the end, you do hold those vows as something very integral to your relationships, and making sure that if you're with this person, are you truly going to care for them in sickness and in health? And are you up for that challenge? And sometimes people aren't. And some people, I don't think, realize what they're saying until they're already 30, 40 years into that marriage or in that relationship. And that's where things can go on their separate ways. And I think that's just a really interesting idea to see how these people are starting over in a way and almost reshaping their lives to be something else, even in a later point in their life.
Yeah, it's true. And when you say those vows, I do feel like some people just say them and it's all about the wedding and the pretty dress and everything. But I truly remember saying those vows to my husband almost 35 years ago. And I truly meant them, but not, you mean them you're in your early 20s getting married. You can't imagine that when you're 58, your spouse is going to have 4 strokes, and you truly are stepping up into that in sickness and health. And it's not, oh, I thought you meant a cold. No, we're talking some serious stuff here where you're the caregiver. Yeah. Hospital, rehab, financial, because I mean, it has put me in a position where I am everything. I am the breadwinner, take care of the house, pay for college, take care of all the bills, take care of him. So it put me in the role of everything for him, to make sure he's got his medicine and all the things you would never think about, that you're 100% taking care of another person. If you're going to make those vows, and I would think, it's just my thought, maybe you might agree, Teresa, being older, having already been married a long time, you realize what marriage is all about and the commitment of it. And maybe that's why I wouldn't want to make that commitment to anyone else ever again, because I don't think, that just came to me, I don't think I could mean it, because I have given so much into the marriage I'm in now and into taking care of my husband and truly honoring those vows.
I think we see that with a lot of the later daters, and just that kind of internal struggle and processing that emotion of, okay, I've spent so much of my time in my life, a majority of my life, with this one person, with what I think is my soulmate. And now here I am alone trying to connect with somebody else who has another soulmate or still
and has a history, has gone through, you've been through life at that point. You have lived it, all the ups and downs, all the good and the bad and all the things that happen. And I think you're not naive anymore. You don't have that, this is all going to be like the fairy tale. You don't have fairy tale anymore.
You're seeing more the black and white of it all instead of
the realist. It's realistic, and you've had your children, you've raised your kids, you've done all those things, and now you just want to hang on to what you've earned. I don't mean that to sound very sour or anything, but it's just, I think that's realistic. Yeah, it's a different perspective.
That's exactly the point of the show, as far as, what we're doing here on the podcast is such a different perspective than what Abby has as a young woman, and then us as you being married and still at your age, and myself being divorced and actually potentially in the future dating again, which is very scary and does not sound like something I'd like to do.
I get it. It sounds scary to me too. So anything else you'd like to add about the show, The Later Daters? Shall I wrap it up? Do you have something, Abby? Why are you looking at me like a Cheshire cat?
That's just my face.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to think of something that would be a good wrap up, but I don't have it. Sorry.
Okay. All right. We're going to wrap it up now. So thank you, Abby and Teresa, for being here to talk about this with me and our audience today. So I think it's interesting to share from the perspectives. And I feel like if you have not watched Later Daters, go check it out. And I would love to hear your feedback and thoughts on the show, about your thoughts on dating and marriage versus being young and being a little bit older. And as always, please share the podcast with your friends and family. You can find it at my website, which is Lori. What is my website?
Lori
No, that's my email. Oh my God. This is a train wreck. The first one was beautiful.
Yes,
the one that you will never hear was so good. Okay. My website is loriwilliams-seniorservices.com. Thanks for listening and tune in next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.